Hello. Today we'll be talking about the Jesse Wells song Slaves. This song discusses many very important things, I think, that happen in our modern society. We like to think that slavery was a thing of the past, and it absolutely, it obviously was a thing in the past, but it's not stayed in the past, that's for sure. So first I wanted to start by talking about like a bunch of the specific examples that he talks about in this song. So first I'm going to go over like the international issues that he speaks in this, and then I'm going to talk about the more domestic American examples of modern day slavery that he talks about in this song. Um, so yeah, let's get started. Such a happy topic. um, So first of all, he talks about Nestle in this song, and so a whistleblower reported misleading statements against child labor, which I feel like is just the magnum opus of all of this. Is that Nestle was using child labor in its farms in Africa, and it wasn't the fact that they were using child labor that was reported by the whistleblower. It was the fact that they stated they didn't use child labor and they lied about that. It was the lying that they were reporting. Just like, how is that the case? That is just absolutely insane to me. Like, that is fucking crazy that it wasn't the fact that they were using child labor that was the big problem here. No. It was the fact that they misled their customers. That was the thing that got them in some form of trouble, and even then it went nowhere. But like, that is just fucking insane. And further investigation after this whistleblower complaint said that the majority of the field workers they witnessed were children, and 60% of their farms are in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. So, yeah, it's not looking good. And these two countries specifically had 1.48 million children working in dangerous jobs in farming during 2018 to 2019. So that really tells you, um, how I mean, I'm sure you probably already knew Nestle was evil, but there's some numbers for you, I suppose. Another one he talks about in this song is the Democratic Republic of Congo provides 70% of the world's cobalt. And in that industry, 1.5 to 2 million people are in unregulated mining. So there's very frequent accidents. Just recently, there was a bridge collapse. I forget exactly when this was, but and I don't remember the exact number of people that were injured and killed, but it was quite significant. And instances of that are fairly common. That's not a one-off whatsoever. And cobalt is highly magnetic and allows for the creation of superalloys, so it is a critical component in a lot of our modern day technology, namely electric cars. And so I think that's kind of an instance of such injustices that are taking place in an industry that so many people support with good intention. Um, Personally, I believe that a lot of the electric car stuff, because electric cars are still bad for the environment, these they require like cobalt mining and stuff like that, and there's various other reasons. They require a lot of electricity to produce, which is bad for the environment. Like, while they are not burning the same amount of fuel, obviously, that traditional cars are, they are still polluting the earth through other means. Um, and so I feel like we don't really have a good solution when it comes to like which one's better. I feel like it's more like a pick your poison. Which one would you prefer that's going to pollute the earth no matter what and exploit workers no matter what? And like, there are other ways that vehicles have been powered that are far more sustainable. Like, I know there's a bus system that is powered with sewage in I'm sorry, I don't remember which country, but I know that that's been a thing and has been very successful, and that's a good, use of what we have that's just waste. But when it comes to traditional engines versus electric, I feel like electric cars are not the best solution, but people still support them through, they think they're doing the right thing. Um, the intentions are good. The intentions are pure, is my point. And so I feel like those good intentions have been kind of hijacked for companies to sell a product that is still using exploitative labor to produce. And so it's very disappointing. And yeah, so another thing that he talks about in this song is Bangladesh and Central American companies that use exploitative labor in the textile industry. They run a culture of fear in these factories and all this sort of thing. And as many of you know, child labor is very common in these. It's difficult to find specific statistics. I struggled to find those, but they do. And lots of companies will threaten workers to stay. There's unions. What are those? Don't exist. Never have. And just generally, people are completely abused in these workplaces. They're paid next to nothing to work in these textile factories, and expected to stay or else, basically. And in especially Bangladesh specifically, that is the vast majority of the industry that happens in Bangladesh. So you don't have a lot of options. Sorry if it's loud outside. There's a garbage truck going by. But in these, Bangladesh specifically, that's so much of the industry that you're not going to find a lot of work elsewhere, is the other thing. Is that, like, so many people in the West I've seen have said things like, well, if you're not paid properly in that job, find a different job. And it's like, one, none of the jobs pay well there. That's kind of the point. And then two, like, of course, unless you're like, for like educated labor, they would pay more and all that sort of thing. But for like the average person working, most of the jobs there do not pay very well. And most of the industry is textile. So you don't really have a lot of options here. Whereas in the West, we have more options. And I mean, that's not a reasonable excuse to get, mad at people that don't have a lot of money. Don't bark. And it's not a reasonable excuse because the job market's a difficult thing. But we are still fortunate to have more opportunities for different labor if we want it. And of course, we have, better laws that still obviously need work, and a lot of them are not very enforced. But we still have a lot of better, safer conditions than a lot of these people do. Anyway, and the other thing I wanted to talk about was Amazon. He mentions in this video this song, and so specifically and specifically I was researching their accusations of basically human trafficking. Amnesty International described what they were doing in Saudi Arabia as human trafficking. So what had happened was Nepalese workers in Saudi Arabia had been lied to by third-party companies that were getting them jobs in these Amazon warehouses. And they had them pay a fee for them to hire them. And so, like I said, this was a third party. This wasn't Amazon directly, but Amazon also still facilitated this, allowed this to happen. And the accommodations that they received, which, again, were not from Amazon, but Amazon also did nothing to help this. This third-party company gave them accommodations in Saudi Arabia because they were not from there. They were from Nepal. And it was infested with bed bugs. And food was difficult to acquire. Like, it was not living conditions for people to properly live in. And Amazon was completely chill with this, was completely fine with this to happen. And then they got caught, of course. But not a whole lot came of that anyways. People just got mad at them and they sent those people back to Nepal. That's all that really happened with this. So those people just lost their jobs and had been deceived, and not much justice was accomplished. So yay! Yeah, and then I wanted to talk about, like I said earlier, the more American modern day slavery that goes on, which is yippee. And so first of all, he talks about in this song, the prisoners, the prison system allows people to work, and they don't really pay them very well at all. And it has roots in slavery as well, like in the more what people think of as slavery, because prisoners started working in like fields and outside of the prisons around the same time that the Civil War ended. Riddle me why that would be. Huh. That's a curious question, isn't it? And so nowadays, workers are paid nothing for government jobs, which is a good portion of the jobs they fill. So, like, street cleaners, a lot of the stuff that you imagine, other than working in fields, because that is privatized. Farming is privatized. But other than that, a lot of the traditional prisoner jobs you think of are government jobs, which they are not paid for. In Alabama specifically, was what I was researching. And whereas if they worked for a privatized company, they're paid $7.25 to work an average 30 hours in over 500 different companies. However, 40% of the wages, $5 per ride, and $15 for laundry is automatically taken a month by the state. And turning down this work can be basically punished. They don't call it punishment, but it is punishment, because they'll get delayed parole. They're less likely to get parole. They can move prisons. So, like, say if they're in a lower security prison, they can move them to a higher security prison if they don't work, and denying them family visit or conjugal visits. So that's nice, and that's a great example because it's directly perpetrated by the government and through government agencies. You can't even say that it's corporate greed or something like that. It's directly the government aiding corporate greed through its own workings. And then the other one I want to talk about was Cargill. And Cargill was revealed. Now, this wasn't specifically Cargill. It was, again, a third-party company, but doesn't absolve them whatsoever. Cargill contracted a company called Packer Sanitation Services Incorporated, which is a cleaning company for protein factories, and that's basically they're a sanitation company for factories. And 27 children as young as 13 were found to be working in Cargill plants in Kansas and Texas. PSSI has been found to employ over 100 miners working in hazardous materials in 13 different factories. At least 3 have suffered injuries from this work. And most child labor cases have found that the children were migrants from Central American companies, namely Guatemala, when it came to specifically PSSI, which is through the 260,000 migrant children with no parents that entered the U.S. in 2021 to 2023. It's truly a disgusting thing. It's another form of human trafficking, in my opinion, perpetrated by these private companies. Obviously, this specifically with PSSI and Cargill, but so many others are doing this. Who else are doing this? Some of them we know, some of them we don't, I'm sure. And it's a really scary thought to imagine how much exploitative labor there is in the States that goes unreported because it's happening to illegal immigrants. It's fucking disgusting. It's absolute, in my opinion, it's human rights violations. It's awful. So to kind of close off this video, a lot of this has been very factual. Some more talking about, at the end of the song, he talks about, it says that every corporation's got some blood on its hands. Now I got blood on my phone and blood on my pants. The dollar bill's a killer. It's bigger than man. It ain't never felt better to be American. It's just the idea that, sadly, we live in a world where it is almost unavoidable to support exploitative labor. Obviously, you can try your best to boycott different companies and research the fuck out of everything you do, but no matter what, you are going to be supporting a company somewhere along the line that is exploitative. And the other thing is that I'm guilty of this as well. I don't really follow a lot of boycotts and stuff like that unless it's a company that I already wasn't buying from, because it's simply either two different things. Convenience, which is horrible, it feels awful to say, But it is the simple convenience of things like Amazon that makes you want to buy from them. And so you know that they are doing these exploitative things, but you still buy them because what else are you going to do? Are you going to, like, the grocery store is exploitative. Are you not going to ever eat bananas or fruit ever again in your life? These are things that sadly are just things that happen in our society. And like it feels very powerless for us to do anything, especially when it's in if another country. How are we supposed to stop that sort of thing? And so, while yes, our dollar bill is our vote in this, what else are you gonna buy? Every banana company is exploiting children. All of them. So it's like you're not going to be able to pick a different company that's not exploiting someone. It's a horrible reality that we live in with international trade, is that every step of the way there's going to be someone that has been exploited, and it's almost impossible to avoid. And the other factor into this, which is huge, is monetary. Is that people that are, lower middle class or low class can't afford to constantly be caring about these sorts of things. I know I can't. My example of Amazon there is like, okay, if I want to buy something off of Amazon that is going to be far cheaper because it's from China, or I could go to a more local place that probably has less exploitative behaviors, but it's going to be 5 times the price, or something along those lines. I can't afford that, but I still need that product. And so it pits the extremely poor against the poorer of the West and more developed nations. And I'm not trying to say that in a disrespectful way. Is that we exploit other people through not being able to afford non-exploitative means, and it's a horrible thing. And like it's such an easy solve is the other thing. It's just simply no one exploit anybody, and everything would cost around the same. It's an extremely easy fix that sadly it's just not happening. And so now we're it's also, in my opinion, a large continuation of colonialism as well, because a lot of these places that are targeted are ex-colonial countries. And so these exploitative behaviors and corruption in those governments just continues. Namely, especially with like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire and all this sort of thing, is that those colonial roots, they've never really stopped, because even though nowadays it is less so, the British and the French that are perpetrating it, they still are. Their governments are still meddling and still causing issues within those governments. It is also still the people that have inherited that colonialism, that have risen to power through that colonialism, that are continuing on that legacy of corruption and greed. And, when is that going to stop? Hopefully in the near future. And, I hope the best for those people. And it's a sad world we live in. It really is. And like all of this just also perpetrates like so much damage on the environment as well. These cheap labor practices and cheap practices in general usually pollutes the earth in more extreme ways. It's just it's a vicious cycle we're living in. And like I said, it feels very difficult to solve. But look up petitions for different things that you feel passionate about. I often do that. I'll go to like change.org and all that sort of thing and scroll through and see if there's any petitions that about things that I feel strongly about. That's honestly the best way. And if you've got some money, research it, a reputable charity, donate to those. I recommend Doctors Without Borders. That's a good one. I know that's not really specifically about modern day slavery, but it's a good charity, and they do a lot of genuine work. And I don't know, that's the best way to help attend protests if there are any in your area. I know, they probably won't be about labor practices if you're living in America and all that sort of thing. In other countries, but like, do whatever you can to help, or whatever you feel like you can. All right, that's all I have to say for today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.